Now that the proposed changes to the Hex Rune have been officially stated by Behavior and are in the public test server, I feel I can give my initial response. I'm going to be breaking this response into two separate parts. Firstly, how I feel personally as a player towards the change, and secondly, how I think the community as a whole are going to respond to it. Before I start, I'm going to state where I feel I am as a player. With just under 150 hours of playtime, I'm a red ranked killer and a rank 10ish survivor. From both perspectives, I feel that Ruin did in fact need a change. However, I feel that the timing was quite poor and that the new Ruin doesn't seem to be worth running on most builds due to the fact that they said that New Ruin is supposed to be strongest at late game, but it's a hex perk still. It's going to be dismantled in early game. So I don't know. We'll need to test it more, but my initial response is I don't think it's going to be strong enough. The issue with old Hex Rune could be felt from both. I could feel the issues with it from Killer and Survivor during the games. The problem with old Rune is that only one of three things usually happens. Scenario 1, Ruin lasts all game and survivors get obliterated. This happened a lot at like the rank 20 ranks. Like 15 to 20, it happened a lot. 2, Ruin lasts for the first 3 minutes of the game or so. And this is a perfect scenario where the killers and the survivor both feel like they have a good chance to win the game still. And it gives the killer that perfect amount of early game pressure to keep them going through it, so it's not just an absolute steamroll in the first 4 minutes of the game for the killer. And the third scenario, which happens mostly at high ranks, red ranks and purple ranks, Ruin is cleansed within the first 20 seconds of the game, and the killer feels cheated of a perk slot, and it's quite irritating, I must say. Now I'm thinking about it, four things actually happen. The fourth scenario happens it's occasionally, but it does happen. The Ruin lasts the entire game, but the survivors, all four of them, have 1,000+ hours in the game, and they all just hit great skill checks. This is quite rare, and it's quite funny when it happens, but it is something that sometimes happens with it. I feel the issue comes down to the nature of hex perks. They can be cleansed. The idea is sound. The survivors must decide, hey, do I look for the totems and waste time? Or do I just power through this generator and waste time and hopefully I can get through it? But this isn't really what happens mostly. Most of the time, survivors either can't find the totems at all or find them immediately. I mean, let's not kid ourselves, there are only so many locations a totem can spawn on the map. Just think, any new player can just go on YouTube and memorize all of the spawn locations of Hex Ruin without even playing the game. And a player with over 500 hours, let alone over 1,000 hours, 5,000 hours, they also know where all of the totems spawn. And if one of these players goes into your game, the totems are going to disappear very quickly, let alone if all four of them know where the totems are. And where am I going with all of this? Well, as a killer, I was already looking for a reason to dump Ruin as a core perk. I mean, running Ruin as a killer is boring. It's so boring, I can't interact with it. It's just there, just working away when I don't. And I do agree with what Behavior said, where it's just like, it's not, it's boring. I don't have to interact with it, and it just irritates the survivors. And I know I sound like a secret survivor main. Oh, he hates Ruin. Well, it must be a survivor main. Well, no, but it did need a change, but I feel like the timing is so bad. I mean, it was absolutely crushing. Hex Ruin was crushing new players, obliterating them into dust. But with experienced players, it was the only reason that red ranks would run Ruin is to get a precious 20 seconds at the start of the game before people started working on gens. That 20 seconds they need just to find a survivor. The generator speed problem is so bad that killers are willing to give up an entire perk out of their 4 just for an extra 20 seconds in the game. That should speak to the absolute crazy town banana pants scenario we're in. Gens, even without add-ons like toolboxes, just get done in a flash. It's bonkers. ultimately the change was really poorly timed but necessary. I feel like it should have come along with a... They must be working on like an overall overhaul to the way generators work, because this feels like the change that should have come along with that patch. Because at the moment it just feels like we're taking this away and we're not giving you anything. They must be working on like an overall overhaul to the way generators work, because this feels like the change that should have come along with that patch. Because at the moment it just feels like we're taking this away and we're not giving you anything. Now, how do I feel about how the community will respond to this change? Have you been on Reddit? Have you been on Reddit? Have you been on Reddit for the last few days? Let's make one thing clear now. A lot of killers feel as if they are the unloved children of behavior, often forgotten for the perfect, sweet, favorite survivors in behavior's eyes. Now, I don't think this is true at all. However, you have to understand that a lot of the community do think this. Just check the Reddit, for example, right now. Because of this, many killers are in the position of waiting for the final straw to break the camel's back. This nerf, to them at least, is not a straw. It's a fucking tree trunk. While I don't think it's a massive nerf, they do think it is a massive, disgusting, unfair nerf. And where cooler minds should prevail, there will undoubtedly be some killers who will give up because of this. You may be asking me, so? What's the issue? Bad killers got mad and left. Big deal? What's the big deal? Well, think of it like this. You think red rank survivors' wait times are long at the moment? If 50 killers like flip the table over and just quit playing killer, that's 200 survivors more in the queue in front of you. That's going to increase the queue times massively. And you have to understand that the change isn't that bad, but some people have the mindset of us versus them. It's survivors versus the killers, not all players together. And I don't want this to turn into a mass killer exodus. You also have to consider that the angry killers who get mad about this, who don't leave the game, those players, you think that the toxicity is bad now from those players? You think the hook camping is bad now? You think the tunneling is bad now? You think those guys are sweaty now? They are going to come away from this with a massive vendetta. And while it won't, I think after a month people will calm down and accept the new meta. You have to be ready for the first month after the change, where there is going to be a NOED iridescent head extravaganza, and I cannot bloody wait for that.